Admiral Kyle Harrison stood on the bridge of the starship Aurora's Edge, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. He had been in space for 3 months now, leading Earth's first big mission to explore the far reaches of the galaxy. His crew of 42 people had become like family to him during their long journey. "Admiral, we're getting something strange on our sensors," said Lisa Brooks from her station. She was the ship's tactical officer, a smart woman in her early 30s who never missed anything important. Her fingers moved quickly across her control panel as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Kyle walked over to her station and looked at the screen. The readings didn't make sense to him either. There were massive shapes moving toward them from the direction of the Kepler system, but they were still too far away to see clearly. "How many ships are we talking about?" Kyle asked. Lisa frowned as she counted the signals. "At least 200, sir. Maybe more. They're big, too. Much bigger than anything we've ever built." Danny Martinez looked up from the engineering station where he had been checking the ship's systems. He was a quiet man who knew everything about how their ship worked. "Admiral, if there are that many ships out there, we might want to think about turning around and heading home." Amy Carter, their communications officer, suddenly sat up straight at her station. She was young, maybe 25, but she was the best at her job that Kyle had ever seen. "Admiral, I'm picking up a transmission. It's coming from those ships." "Put it through the speakers," Kyle ordered. The bridge filled with a deep, harsh voice that sounded like it came from something that wasn't human. The words were spoken in perfect English, but there was something cold and threatening about the way they were said. "Small human vessel, you will stop your movement and prepare to surrender. This is Fleet Commander Vextar of the Draconian Imperial Navy. Your species has entered space that belongs to the Draconian Empire. You will return to your home world and tell your people that they have 72 hours to surrender completely, or we will destroy every human in the galaxy." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in complete silence. Kyle felt his heart beating fast as he tried to process what he had just heard. He had read reports about the Draconians in the files back on Earth, but seeing their fleet in person was something entirely different. "Lisa, how long until they reach us?" he asked. "About 6 hours at their current speed, sir." Kyle nodded and walked back to the center of the bridge. He pressed a button on his chair that would connect him to every person on the ship. "This is the Admiral speaking. We have encountered the Draconian fleet. All hands, prepare for possible combat. Department heads report to the briefing room in 10 minutes. As his senior officers gathered around the table in the briefing room, Kyle looked at each of their faces. These people had volunteered to come on this mission, knowing it might be dangerous, but none of them had expected to face something like this. "We all heard the transmission," Kyle began. "The Draconians have given Earth 72 hours to surrender. We need to get a message back to Earth as quickly as possible so they can prepare." Amy Carter spoke up first. "I've already sent a priority message to Earth Command. It will take about 18 hours to reach them because of the distance." "Good thinking," Kyle said. "Danny, how are our weapons and shields?" Danny looked uncomfortable. "Sir, our ship was built for exploration, not fighting. We have basic defensive systems and some small weapons, but nothing that could take on even one Draconian warship, let alone 200 of them." Lisa had been studying the tactical data on her portable screen. "Admiral, I've been looking at what we know about Draconian ships from the intelligence files. Their smallest warships are 3 times the size of our biggest military vessels. Their largest ships are bigger than entire city blocks." Kyle felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, not just for his crew but for all of humanity. The Draconians were known throughout the galaxy as ruthless conquerors who had destroyed 17 different civilizations. They had never been defeated in battle. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "I'm picking up more transmissions between the Draconian ships. They're not bothering to encrypt them. They're talking about Earth like it's already conquered." Kyle stood up and walked to the small window in the briefing room. In the distance, he could now see tiny points of light that were getting bigger. The Draconian fleet was getting closer. "Amy, send another message to Earth. Tell them what we're facing out here. Tell them." Kyle paused, trying to find the right words. "Tell them that humanity is about to face its greatest test." Back on Earth, Captain Ryan Phillips received the message at Defense Station Sentinel-1. which orbited high above the planet. He had been Kyle's friend since they were both young officers, and reading Kyle's report made his blood run cold. Ryan immediately called Dr. Patricia Wells, Earth's top expert on alien species. When she arrived at the station, her face was pale after reading the report. "Ryan, I've studied every piece of information we have about the Draconians," she said. "They've never lost a war. They've never even lost a major battle. When they say they'll destroy a civilization, they mean it." Ryan looked out at Earth through the station's observation deck. The blue and green planet looked so peaceful from up here. It was hard to believe that in less than 72 hours it might all be gone. "Patricia, is there anything in your research that might help us? Any weakness the Draconians might have?" Patricia shook her head slowly. "The only thing that's strange is that there are some old reports, really old ones, that mention the Draconians being afraid of something. But the reports are so old and fragmented that no one has ever been able to figure out what they were afraid of." As the hours passed, both Kyle's crew in space and the people on Earth prepared for what seemed like the end of everything. None of them knew that the next few days would change everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the galaxy. 60 hours had passed since the Draconian ultimatum. Kyle Harrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora's edge, watching as Earth's small defense fleet took position. 12 ships in total, including his own. It wasn't much against 200 massive alien warships, but it was all humanity had. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Captain Phillips on Sentinel-1, Amy Carter announced from her communications station. Kyle nodded. "Put him through." Ryan Phillips appeared on the main screen. His face looked tired and worried. Behind him, Kyle could see the busy activity of the defense station as people prepared for the battle that was coming. "Kyle, Earth Command has given us permission to engage the Draconians if they attack," Ryan said. "We know the odds aren't good, but we're not going down without a fight." "Understood, Ryan. My fleet is in position between Earth and the Draconian ships. We'll buy you as much time as we can." Kyle cut the transmission and looked around his bridge. His crew was ready. Lisa Brooks had all weapon systems prepared. Danny Martinez had the engines running at full power. Amy Carter was monitoring all frequencies for any sign of Draconian movement. "Admiral," Lisa called out, "the Draconian fleet is moving. They're heading straight for us." On the main screen, Kyle could see the massive alien ships approaching. Even at this distance, they looked enormous. The largest ships were shaped like giant triangles, dark and menacing against the stars. Smaller ships flew around them like insects around giants. "All ships, this is Admiral Harrison," Kyle spoke into his communicator. "Remember, we're not trying to win this fight. We're trying to show them that humanity won't give up without a battle. Make every shot count." The Draconian fleet moved slowly but steadily toward the human ships. Kyle could feel his heart beating faster as he watched them approach. In 30 minutes, the battle would begin. "Admiral, I'm getting something strange on sensors," called out Lieutenant Commander Jake Murphy from the sensor station. He was a thin man with thick glasses who had joined the mission because he loved studying space phenomena. "What kind of strange?" Kyle asked. Jake looked confused as he stared at his instruments. "Sir, there are energy readings coming from somewhere behind the Draconian fleet, but I can't see anything there. It's like the energy is coming from empty space." Amy Carter suddenly straightened up at her station. "Admiral, I'm picking up transmissions, but they're not coming from the Draconian ships. They're coming from the same area. Jake is detecting the energy readings. Can you make out what they're saying?" "No, sir. The signals are too fragmented. It's like someone is trying to communicate, but the signal keeps breaking up." Kyle felt a chill run down his spine. Something was happening that none of them understood. "Lisa, are our weapons ready?" "Yes, sir. All systems are green." The Draconian fleet was now only 15 minutes away. Kyle could see individual details. On their ships through the main screen, the alien vessels looked like they had been built for war. Every line and curve seemed designed to inspire fear. "Admiral," Jake called out urgently, "the energy readings are getting stronger, much stronger. It's like something huge is powering up." "What do you mean, something huge?" "Sir, these readings are off the charts. Whatever is generating this energy, it's bigger than anything I've ever seen. Bigger than the entire Draconian fleet. Kyle was about to respond when Amy Carter shouted from her station. Admiral, the Draconian communications just went silent. All of them. Every ship in their fleet just stopped transmitting. Lisa Brooks looked up from her tactical station, with wide eyes. Sir, the Draconian ships are slowing down. They're stopping. On the main screen, Kyle could see that the alien fleet had indeed stopped moving. The massive ships hung motionless in space, no longer approaching Earth or the human defense fleet. Jake, what are your sensors telling you? Kyle asked. Jake's voice was filled with amazement and confusion. Admiral, the energy readings are incredible now. It's like someone just turned on the power to an entire star system, and it's all focused on the area around the Draconian fleet. Amy, are you getting any transmissions now? Just fragments, sir. I can make out a few words here and there. Something about protocol activated and compact violation detected. Kyle felt like he was watching something impossible happen before his eyes. The Draconian fleet, which had been moving steadily toward Earth just minutes before, was now completely motionless in space. Then, without any warning, something impossible happened. The entire Draconian fleet simply disappeared, not destroyed by weapons, not retreating into hyperspace. They just vanished, as if someone had turned off a light switch. One moment, 200 massive alien warships were there, and the next moment, there was nothing but empty space. Jake, what are your sensors showing? Kyle asked in a voice that was barely above a whisper. Jake stared at his instruments for a long moment before answering. Sir, according to every sensor we have, there's nothing there. The Draconian fleet is completely gone. It's like they never existed. Lisa Brooks ran every scan she could think of. Admiral, I'm not detecting any debris, any energy signatures from weapons, nothing. They're just gone. Amy Carter was frantically working at her communication station. Sir, I'm picking up transmissions from all over the galaxy. Other species are reporting that Draconian forces everywhere have vanished at exactly the same time. Every single Draconian ship in the galaxy just disappeared. Kyle sank into his command chair, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The most powerful military force in the galaxy had simply vanished without a trace. Admiral, Jake called, out, his voice filled with wonder. I'm still detecting those strange energy readings, but they're fading now. Whatever caused this is powering down. Back on Earth, Captain Ryan Phillips was dealing with the same impossible situation. Dr. Patricia Wells had arrived on Sentinel-1 just in time to witness the disappearance of the Draconian fleet. Ryan, this is impossible, she said, staring at the sensor readings. You can't just make 200 starships disappear like that. It goes against every law of physics we know. But it happened, Ryan replied. The question is, what made it happen, and why? Dr. Wells pulled up every piece of data they had recorded during the event. Look at this, she said, pointing to the energy readings. These patterns, they're not random. This was controlled, deliberate. Someone or something made the Draconian fleet disappear. Ryan looked out at the stars where the alien fleet had been just minutes before. But who has that kind of power? And why would they help us? On the Aurora's edge, Kyle was asking the same questions. His crew had gone from preparing to die in a hopeless battle to witnessing the impossible disappearance of their enemy. Admiral, Amy said quietly, I'm still picking up those fragmented transmissions. I think I can make out a few more words now. Something about Terra Directive and Guardians Awakened. Kyle had never heard those terms before, but something about them made him feel strange. Like he should know what they meant even though he was certain he had never heard them in his life. Set course for Earth, Kyle ordered. We need to figure out what just happened and we need to do it fast. Something tells me this isn't over, yet. As the human fleet began its journey home, none of them realized that they had just witnessed the first sign of a truth that would change everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the universe. 6 months had passed since the Draconian fleet disappeared. Admiral Kyle Harrison now commanded a joint investigation team made up of humans and aliens from across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to know what had happened to the most powerful military force in known space. The investigation ship New Horizon was much larger than the Aurora's Edge. It carried scientists, archaeologists, and experts from many different worlds. Kyle walked through the corridors and heard dozens of different languages being spoken as teams worked together to solve the mystery. Dr. Patricia Wells had become the head of the investigation. She worked closely with an alien archaeologist named Cathara, who came from a peaceful species called the Centauri. Cathara looked like a tall, thin human with silver skin and large purple eyes. Her people had been studying ancient history for thousands of years. "Admiral Harrison," Dr. Wells called out as Kyle entered the main laboratory. "We've found something important." Kyle walked over to where Patricia and Cathara were studying a large holographic display. The display showed images of ancient ruins on a dead planet that had once been part of Draconian space. "What am I looking at?" Kyle asked. Cathara spoke in her soft, musical voice. "These ruins are very old, Admiral, much older than the Draconian Empire. We found them on a world called Xerion Prime, which the Draconians conquered 300 years ago." Patricia pointed to symbols carved into the ancient stone walls. "Look at these warnings, Kyle. They're written in 12 different languages, most of them extinct, but they all say the same thing." Kyle read the translation that appeared below, the symbols. "Beware the sleeping guardians. The Watchers return when the compact is broken." He looked up at the two scientists. "What does that mean?" "We don't know yet," Patricia admitted. "But we've found similar ruins on 3 other worlds. All of them have the same warnings, and all of them mention something called the Terra Directive." In another part of the ship, Danny Martinez was working with Ben Taylor, a computer specialist who had joined the investigation team. Ben was a young man who was incredibly good with technology and data analysis. "Danny, look at this," Ben said, pointing to his screen. "I've been analyzing those energy readings from when the Draconian fleet vanished. The patterns match theoretical calculations for something called dimensional fold technology." Danny frowned as he looked at the complex equations on Ben's screen. "That's impossible. Dimensional fold technology is purely theoretical. No one has ever been able to make it work." "That's what I thought too," Ben replied. "But these energy signatures are exactly what the theories predict. Someone or something folded space around the entire Draconian fleet and moved them somewhere else." Ben pulled up another set of data on his screen. "There's something else, Danny. I've been going through Earth's oldest computer databases looking for any reference to the Terra Directive. I found some files that are really strange." "Strange how?" "They appear to be older than human civilization. The files are buried so deep in our systems that most people don't even know they exist. And they're encrypted with technology that shouldn't exist yet." Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Phillips was commanding the exploration vessel New Horizon as it visited each of the ancient ruin sites. At their 4th stop, a planet called Vega 7, they made an even more shocking discovery. "Admiral, you need to see this," Ryan called over his communicator. Kyle, Patricia, and Cathara took a shuttle down to the planet's surface. The ruins here were much larger and better preserved than the others they had found. Ancient buildings rose up from the desert like fingers reaching toward the sky. "Look at this central structure," Patricia said as they walked through the ruins. "It's some kind of temple or monument." In the center of the temple was a large circular platform covered with symbols and writing. But these symbols were different from the others they had found. These looked familiar to Kyle, though he couldn't understand why. Cathara was studying the symbols with a handheld scanner. "Admiral, these symbols are not from any known alien language, but they're similar to some very old human writing systems." "That's impossible," Kyle said. "Humans only developed writing a few thousand years ago. These ruins are much older than that." Ben Taylor, who had come down to the planet with them, was running the symbols through his computer analysis programs. "Admiral, you're not going to believe this. My computer is finding matches for these symbols in those encrypted files I discovered in Earth's databases." Kyle felt a strange chill run through him. "What kind of matches?" "The symbols spell out words and phrases that appear in the encrypted files. Words like Terra Directive and Galactic Compact and Guardian Protocol." Patricia was taking detailed scans of everything they found. "Kyle, this doesn't make sense. How can human-like writing appear in ruins that are thousands of years older than human civilization. As they explored deeper into the temple, they found a chamber that contained the most shocking discovery yet. The walls were covered with images that looked like star maps, showing the locations of hundreds of different worlds. Earth was clearly marked at the center of the map. "Look at this," Kethara said, pointing to writing below the star map. "This text talks about watchers and guardians who protect the galaxy. It says they come from a world called Terra." Kyle stared at the ancient writing. Terra is just another name for Earth. But how could ancient aliens know about Earth before humans even existed? Ben was frantically working on his portable computer. "Admiral, I'm breaking through more of those encrypted files. There are references to something called the Terran Exile Protocol. It talks about a powerful civilization that voluntarily left the galaxy to prevent themselves from becoming corrupted by their own power." "That's ridiculous," Kyle said. "No civilization would voluntarily give up power." "According to these files, one did," Ben replied. "The files say that the Terrans were the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had technology that could do anything, including making entire fleets disappear. But they were afraid of what they might become, so they exiled themselves to a primitive world and erased their own memories." Patricia looked up from her scanning equipment. "Kyle, what if Ben is right? What if the Terrans didn't just exile themselves to any primitive world? What if they exiled themselves to Earth?" Kyle felt like the ground was moving under his feet. The idea was impossible, but it would explain so much. It would explain why the ruins contained human-like writing. It would explain why Earth was at the center of the ancient star maps. It would explain how the Draconian fleet had simply vanished. "Are you saying that humans are descended from these Terrans?" Kyle asked. Kethara was studying more of the ancient writing. "Admiral, this text says that the Terrans set up automated defense systems before they went into exile. The systems were programmed to activate if anyone ever threatened the world where the Terrans had gone to live." Kyle's mind was racing. So when the Draconians threatened Earth, the defense systems activated. Patricia finished. "Just like they were programmed to do 50,000 years ago." Ben looked up from his computer with wide eyes. "Admiral, I just found something else in the encrypted files. There's a reference to a monitoring station that was built to watch over the exiled Terrans and protect them until they were ready to remember who they really were." "Where is this monitoring station supposed to be?" Kyle asked. Ben checked his screen again. "According to the files, it's hidden in plain sight. Somewhere every human can see it, but no one would ever suspect what it really is." Kyle felt a strange sensation in his chest, like his heart had skipped a beat. He looked up at the sky above the ancient ruins where Earth's moon was visible even in the daytime. "The moon," he whispered. "They're talking about the moon." As the investigation team prepared to return to their ship, Kyle realized that everything they thought they knew about humanity was about to change. The mystery of the vanishing Draconian fleet was leading them to a truth that would shock the entire galaxy. The humans weren't just another young species stumbling around in space. They were the descendants of the most powerful civilization the galaxy had ever known. And after 50,000 years of exile, something was finally waking up. Admiral Kyle Harrison stared at Earth's moon through the observation window of the New Horizon. After months of investigation, the team was finally returning home with answers that would change everything. But Kyle wasn't sure if humanity was ready to learn the truth about itself. Dr. Patricia Wells entered the observation deck carrying a thick folder of research data. Her face showed the exhaustion of someone who had been working without rest for days. "Kyle, we've finished analyzing all the data from the ruins," she said. "Ben and Kethara have been working together to decode the final pieces of those ancient files. What we've discovered is incredible." Kyle turned away from the window. "Tell me." Patricia opened her folder and pulled out several photographs of ancient carvings. "The Terrans weren't just another advanced civilization, Kyle. They were beyond anything we can imagine. They had technology that could reshape reality itself. They could move planets, create or destroy stars, and travel instantly between galaxies. And they gave all of that up?" "According to the records, yes. The Terran leaders realized that no species should have that much power. They saw what absolute power had done to other civilizations throughout the galaxy. It always led to corruption, war, and eventually self-destruction. Kyle sat down in one of the observation deck chairs. The idea was still hard for him to accept. So they decided to exile themselves to a primitive world and start over. Not just any primitive world, Patricia corrected. They chose Earth specifically because it was far from other civilizations and had the right conditions for them to slowly evolve back into a peaceful species. They wanted to learn humility and wisdom before they ever gained great power again. Chester. Taylor appeared in the doorway of the observation deck. His face was pale with excitement and fear. Admiral Dr. Wells, you need to come to the computer lab right now. Something is happening. They followed Ben through the ship's corridors to the main computer center. Several other team members were gathered around Ben's workstation, all staring at his screen with amazement. What's going on, Ben? Kyle asked. Admiral, remember those encrypted files I found in Earth's databases? They're activating themselves, all of them. It's like something is waking up and unlocking information that's been hidden for thousands of years. On Ben's screen, Kyle could see streams of data appearing faster than anyone could read. Ancient star charts, technical specifications for impossible machines, and detailed records of galactic history were all becoming available for the first time in 50,000 years. How is this possible? Patricia asked. Ben pointed to another screen that was showing energy readings from Earth. Something on Earth is sending out signals. The signals are unlocking these files and activating systems that have been dormant since before human civilization began. Amy Carter, who had been monitoring communications, suddenly called out from her station across the room. Admiral, I'm receiving a transmission. It's coming from Earth, but not from any human source. Put it through the speakers, Kyle ordered. The voice that filled the room was unlike anything they had ever heard. It sounded mechanical, but somehow also alive. Ancient, but also timeless. Greetings, descendants of Terra. This is Control System 7 of the Luna Monitoring Station. I have been waiting 50,000 Earth years for this moment. The exile protocol is now ending. Kyle felt his legs go weak. He grabbed the back of a chair to steady himself. Luna Monitoring Station. The moon. The moon is artificial. The voice continued. I am the intelligence that has watched over humanity since the Great Exile began. I have maintained the defense systems that protect Earth and observed your species as it grew and learned. The time has come for you to know the truth about your origins. Lisa Brooks, who had been quiet during most of the investigation, suddenly spoke up. I can hear it, she said in a strange voice. I can hear the voice in my mind. Kyle looked at Lisa with concern. Her eyes had a distant look like she was seeing something no one else could see. Lisa, are you all right? I'm fine, Admiral. Better than fine. I can feel something waking up inside my mind, like memories that aren't mine, but somehow are mine. The voice from the moon spoke again, but this time it seemed to be speaking directly to Lisa. Descendant Brooks, you carry strong genetic markers of the original Terran psychic abilities. You will serve as a communication bridge while your species adjusts to the awakening. Ben was frantically recording everything that was happening. Admiral, the energy readings from Earth are getting stronger, and I'm detecting similar energy signatures from the moon. Whatever is up there, it's much bigger than we thought. The lunar intelligence spoke through Lisa now, using her voice but with a different tone. Admiral Harrison, Dr. Wells, all of you who have worked to uncover the truth, you must understand what you have discovered. Humanity is not a young species exploring space for the first time. You are the children of the greatest civilization the galaxy has ever known. Patricia stepped forward. If that's true, why don't we remember? Why don't we have any of your technology? Because your ancestors chose to forget, Lisa replied, though the words were coming from the lunar intelligence. The Terrans realized that knowledge without wisdom leads to destruction. They decided to start over, to learn humility and compassion before regaining their power. The exile was meant to last until humanity was ready to use great power responsibly. Kyle felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was learning. Are we ready now? That choice is yours to make, Admiral. The defense systems activated when the Draconians threatened Earth because that was part of the original programming. Any species that threatened the Terran homeworld would be removed. But now that the threat is gone, humanity must decide its own future. Danny Martinez, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. What happened to the Draconian fleet? Where did they go? Lisa's eyes became distant again as the lunar intelligence answered through her. They were transported to a pocket dimension where they could not harm anyone. They remain there, alive but unable to affect the galaxy. They will be released if and when they learn to be peaceful. How many other species know about this? Kyle asked. Very few. The Centauri suspected something, which is why they were so eager to help with your investigation. The Vegan Collective has ancient records that mention the Terrans, but they thought you were extinct. Most other species have forgotten the old stories. Ben looked up from his computer. Admiral, I'm detecting energy signatures from all over Earth now. It's like the entire planet is waking up. Ancient systems that have been hidden for thousands of years are coming online. The lunar intelligence spoke one more time through Lisa. Humanity now faces the same choice your ancestors faced long ago. You can reclaim your heritage and become the guardians of galactic peace once again. You can continue as you are, but with knowledge of your true nature. Or you can choose to forget everything and return to your previous existence. Kyle looked around at his team. These people had risked everything to uncover the truth, and now they had to help their entire species decide what to do with that truth. How long do we have to decide? Kyle asked. Take as much time as you need, Admiral. The defense systems will continue to protect Earth and maintain galactic peace while you choose. But remember, with great power comes great responsibility. Your ancestors understood this. The question is, do you? As the transmission ended, Kyle realized that humanity was about to face the most important decision in its history. They were no longer just another species struggling to survive in a hostile galaxy. They were the heirs to an ancient legacy of power and responsibility that would define their future among the stars. 3 weeks had passed since the lunar intelligence revealed the truth about humanity's origins. Admiral Kyle Harrison sat in the emergency session of Earth's United Council, watching as representatives from every nation on Earth debated the most important decision in human history. Director Helen Foster, who led Earth's Global Defense Initiative, stood at the front of the massive meeting hall. She had been chosen to moderate the discussions because everyone trusted her judgment. Ladies and gentlemen, Helen said, we have heard from our scientists, our philosophers, and our military leaders. Now we must decide. Do we reclaim our ancient heritage as the Terrans, continue as we are with this new knowledge, or choose to forget everything and return to our old lives? Captain Ryan Phillips sat with Kyle in the observer section. Both men had been asked to provide military advice to the council, but the final decision belonged to all of humanity. Kyle, what do you think will happen? Ryan whispered. Kyle watched as the debate continued on the floor below them. I honestly don't know, Ryan. Each choice has risks and benefits. On the floor of the council hall, Dr. Patricia Wells was speaking to the assembly. If we choose to reclaim our full Terran heritage, we would gain incredible power. We could heal diseases, explore the farthest reaches of space, and protect other civilizations from threats. But we would also face the same temptations that made our ancestors choose exile in the first place. A representative from the European Federation stood up to respond. Dr. Wells, how do we know we're ready for that kind of power? What if we make the same mistakes our ancestors were afraid of making? Patricia nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly the question we need to ask ourselves. Our ancestors chose exile because they feared corruption. Have we learned enough during our time on Earth to handle ultimate power responsibly? In another part of the hall, Danny Martinez was presenting the technical aspects of each choice. If we choose the middle path, keeping our current technology but gaining access to some Terran knowledge, we could advance slowly and carefully. We could help other species without overwhelming them or ourselves. Ben Taylor, who had become an expert on the ancient Terran systems, added his thoughts. The lunar intelligence has shown us that many of our recent technological advances were actually guided by dormant Terran programs. Our computers, our space travel, Even our medical knowledge has been subtly influenced by systems our ancestors left behind. Lisa Brooks sat quietly in the corner of the hall. Since becoming the communication bridge with the lunar intelligence, she had developed abilities that amazed and sometimes frightened her. She could sense the emotions of everyone in the room and occasionally glimpse thoughts that weren't her own. The lunar intelligence had explained to her privately that all humans carried dormant Terran abilities. Some people, like Lisa, had stronger genetic markers and would develop psychic powers more quickly. Others might never show any obvious abilities, but they would still benefit from the increased wisdom and empathy that came with awakening their Terran heritage. "Admiral Harrison," Helen Foster called out, "would you please share your thoughts with the council?" Kyle stood up and walked to the speaking platform. He looked out at the hundreds of faces watching him, knowing that his words might influence the future of his entire species. 3 months ago, I was a simple space explorer leading humanity's first deep space mission, Kyle began. I thought I understood our place in the universe. We were young, inexperienced, and vulnerable. When the Draconian fleet appeared, I was prepared to die protecting Earth from an enemy we couldn't possibly defeat. Kyle paused and looked up at the observation windows, where Earth's moon was visible in the afternoon sky. Now I know that we were never as helpless as we thought. Our ancestors built protection systems that we didn't even know existed. They cared about us enough to sacrifice their own power, to give us a chance to grow into something better than they were. The hall was completely silent as Kyle continued. I believe we should choose the middle path. We should accept our heritage as Terrans, but grow into it slowly and carefully. We should use our knowledge to help other species, but we should always remember why our ancestors chose exile in the first place. A representative from the African Union stood up. Admiral, what makes you think we can avoid the corruption that our ancestors feared? Kyle thought about everything he had learned during the investigation. Because we've spent 50,000 years learning to be human. We've experienced poverty, war, suffering, and loss. We've also learned about love, sacrifice, friendship, and hope. Our ancestors were powerful, but they hadn't experienced struggle the way we have. That struggle has taught us things they never knew. Dr. Patricia Wells spoke up from her seat. Kyle is right. The Terrans were advanced, but they lived in a time of peace and plenty. They never had to fight for survival or overcome hardship the way humans have. Those experiences have made us stronger in ways that raw power never could. Ben Taylor stood up and addressed the council. I've been studying the Terran records for weeks now. Their technology is incredible, but their philosophy and wisdom were limited by their lack of struggle. They never learned the lessons that only come from overcoming adversity. Helen Foster called for a preliminary vote. All those in favor of reclaiming full Terran power and technology immediately, please raise your hands. About 20% of the council raised their hands. All those in favor of forgetting everything and returning to our previous existence, please raise your hands. Only a few hands went up, maybe 5% of the council. All those in favor of the middle path, accepting our heritage but growing into it gradually, please raise your hands. The vast majority of hands in the hall went up. Helen smiled. The preliminary vote is clear, but this decision is too important for a simple majority vote. We need to hear from every human community on Earth and in space. Over the next week, the debate spread to every corner of human civilization. Space stations, lunar colonies, research outposts, and cities on Earth all held their own discussions and votes. Lisa Brooks spent much of that week communicating with the lunar intelligence, learning more about what each choice would mean for humanity's future. The Terran systems are patient, she reported to Kyle during one of their private meetings. They've waited 50,000 years. They can wait longer if we need more time to decide. What do you think we should do, Lisa? Kyle asked. Lisa was quiet for a moment, her eyes taking on the distant look that meant she was communicating with the lunar intelligence. I think our ancestors would be proud of us, she finally said. They were afraid of what power might do to them, but they gave us something much more valuable than technology. They gave us the chance to earn wisdom through experience. When all the votes were counted, the result was overwhelming. 85% of humanity chose the middle path. They would accept their heritage as descendants of the Terrans, but they would grow into their power slowly and responsibly. Admiral Kyle Harrison was chosen to lead the new Terran Restoration Council, which would guide humanity's gradual return to its role as protectors of galactic peace. Dr. Patricia Wells became the head of the Department of Ancient Knowledge, responsible for slowly introducing Terran technology and wisdom to human society. Lisa Brooks accepted the position of primary communications bridge, helping other humans develop their dormant psychic abilities at a pace they could handle. The Draconian fleet was released from the pocket dimension, but their experience there had changed them. They returned to the galaxy as a peaceful trading confederation, their warrior culture replaced by a desire to help other species rather than conquer them. As Kyle stood on the observation deck of the restored lunar station 6 months later, he watched children playing in the parks below on Earth. Some of them were already showing signs of developing psychic abilities, but they were learning to use those abilities to help and heal rather than to dominate. The galaxy was safer now, protected by systems that prevented aggressive species from threatening peaceful worlds. But more importantly, humanity had learned that true strength came not from power, but from the wisdom to use power responsibly. The Terrans had returned to the galaxy, but they had returned as something better than they had been before. They had returned as humans who had learned the value of humility, sacrifice, and love through 50,000 years of struggle and growth. And in the depths of space, other young civilizations looked up at the stars and wondered if they too might one day find the strength to become something greater than themselves.